Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Good Monday morning. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live, KSGF.com. We've, out of the gate, a number of very promising, positive developments when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to deals with China. Also, a potential step forward between Zelensky and Putin. Zelensky saying he's willing to meet with Putin. Dan Bongino, of course, who has been the deputy director of the FBI for, I don't know, a couple months now, it seems like. I'm not sure exactly when it was that he was sworn in. Took to X on Saturday to provide an update on a number of different issues, including Epstein and what is going on there. I think it's makes sense that Dan Bongino, I think, would be addressing this. I think there's a good chance more than any of the people within the Trump realm understand that there are a lot of Americans that are like, what the heck's going on with this? Because of what he did prior to being appointed deputy director of the FBI, and that was host a show and taking calls and talking about these things. And even when you have people like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and these others that seem to be of Trump world and have the absolute right focus, when you are not talking to average Americans every single day, it's easy to I don't want to not lose touch, but just forget what the exact mindset on any given day for average Americans who care about this stuff is, because you are in a different world. It doesn't mean that it's not headed in the positive direction or that they aren't focused on the right things, but when you are in something day to day, and you, let's say, for example, there's movement forward, and Pam Bondi has it was just as late as last week, or recently as last week, noted that they were going through thousands and thousands of hours of videotapes that were presumably the tapes secretly taken at Epstein Island. And if you're in that every day and getting briefed every day, you know that this is something that's being worked on. But you and I, as people on the outside going about our days, listening to shows to try to gather information, and we don't hear anything for days or weeks at a time, we begin to think, well, what's the story here? Are they not doing anything? And Dan Bongino being somebody who every day for several years was talking about these sorts of things. So I think he's, even though out of that position and in as deputy director of the FBI for some time now, still recognizes that folks out here are like, what's going on? And so it makes sense that he goes to social media to say, hey, folks, here's the latest. And it's not just Epstein. He lists a number of different areas, some of which you may have even forgotten. He's like, these are all things that we are currently looking at. So we'll go over some of that stuff coming up as well. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447 KSGF. If you want to text in, feel free to do so. We'd love to have you do just that. In the meantime, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for rain throughout the day, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 75. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Tuesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then clear sunny skies with a high near 81. And looking ahead to Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 87.
Hey, let's hear what Chad had to say recently about Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. We recently had the pleasure of working with Emily Johnson, top-notch realtor here in Springfield, Missouri. We couldn't have asked for a better experience. Emily's expertise, professionalism, unwavering dedication truly sets her apart. She listened closely to our needs, was patient with us during our extended home search, and provided invaluable insights into the Springfield, Nixa, Ozark, Stratford, Willard, and Republic real estate market, helping us make informed decisions every step of the way. Emily even helped us coordinate renovations, connecting us with excellent local contractors, making sure our new home was exactly how we envisioned it. Her strong negotiating skills saved us significant money, making the process seamless from beginning to end. We highly recommend Emily Johnson to anyone needing an exceptional realtor in Springfield. What more can be said? I don't think I can say anything more other than that's just one of the many reasons through my experience of many of you that are friends and people I haven't met, of course, but who post their specific experiences with Emily Johnson. All those reasons I recommend her for any of your home buying and home selling needs. Well, listen to this. Dow futures rocket higher by 1,000 points after U.S.-China agree to cut tariffs. Now, it's a 90-day reduction. And what a far cry from the calls in the media and by Democrats that Trump was rushing us towards a Great Depression. Stock market was just going to crash. Kamala Harris out there word saling it up about how never had anybody within 100 days destroy an economy like Trump. And they were all pointing to the stock market because of, what, one day? The media, they're probably not going to be leading with the story about this 1,000-point plus surge in the stock market. Now, of course, it can go back down. It can go up even higher. It could go way down at some point before it goes way back up. This is how these things work. And if a reasonable press and an honest Democrat Party existed, everyone would know this. We would not have heard about the Great Depression, number 2, that Donald Trump was ushering in whenever these tariffs first kicked in. And things are playing out exactly as Trump said they would. Exactly how he said they would. In fact, many of you may recall he was recommending that day that the stocks dipped. I'd buy now because it's going to go back up. And lo and behold, he was correct. The U.S. and China announced today that tariffs against one another will be reduced for the 90-day period after officials held trade negotiations in Switzerland. The tariffs President Trump announced against China on April 2nd are being cut by 24 percentage points for the temporary period while retaining the remaining rate of 10% from the announcement, according to a joint statement. China agreed to the same stipulations, adding that it will adopt all necessary administrative measures to suspend or remove the non-tariff countermeasures taken against the United States since April 2nd. Now, I imagine part of the reason that this is demonstrating confidence is the fact that China and the United States are doing things in a meaningful way. This is the sort of thing that signals to investors, to the markets, that, oh, hey, look, already they're recognizing that it's in everybody's best interest here, and China primarily recognizing it is in the best interest for them to come to the United States and say, okay, let's talk about this. We get it. We understand. We hear your grievances, and we also recognize that you mean it. You're not just virtue signaling, that you mean it. And, you know, there were already in China factories that were shutting down. There were employees that were beginning to protest because the work was drying up. And while the first couple of days of this tariff kicking into place, the Chinese tried to really hit the American people with propaganda. They had citizens on social media kind of mocking the U.S., claiming we don't buy any of your products. So this is silly of you. But it did not take long for the reality to sink in and to see that, while you and I here, on average, the average consumer wasn't really noticing anything But some industries in the United States were already beginning to notice some increases, but it wasn't having the impact that it was in China, in which you had mass factories and people just not, essentially not having any work to do all of a sudden. So it was making a much bigger difference over there, which is what Trump was banking on. And so China has demonstrated it's ready to knuckle under to some degree. And so this is why we're seeing the confidence in the markets. What will be entertaining to watch is how the media will tell us that this is not good. Because we all know there's no way that the media is going to go, look at that. I guess we panicked over nothing. Look at this. Maybe Trump, the great deal maker, actually knows what he's doing. They will figure out some way to explain to us all why this actually isn't that good of a deal, why this is bad for America. So that's going to come with the details, of course, once those get released, which much of them, I'm sure, aren't even in place right now. But clearly, the administration, China has made overtures that Trump felt was a serious demonstration that, okay, they're ready to legitimately deal in a meaningful way here. And so we'll go ahead and put this 90-day pause in place so that we can get some of these deals worked out. But again, clearly this will be described to us as some sort of failure, and how it's not actually a victory for the Trump administration. So we'll just all sit by and wait for that to occur while the stock market continues to soar. Springfield's Talk 1041, Pyramid Roofing Company Talk at text line 417-447-KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. The market looking good because of this announcement regarding the pause on some of these tariffs, the 90 days. There was a meeting, United States and China and Switzerland, and Trump determined that based off of whatever occurred during that meeting, China was serious about making some meaningful changes, and this is what the point of all of this is. I want to go back and stress what I think for a lot of people is a misunderstanding, and that is that Trump, for every single country, had in his mind a secret number, a secret plan that he was holding close to the vest. And the frustration a lot of people had is that, well, we don't know exactly, what is this supposed to look like? When Trump talks about renegotiating the trade agreements with China or with the UK. What does that look like? What is it that he's wanting to do? Is it all about imbalanced trade? Is it, China, you have the fentanyl situation in there. And that is a misunderstanding as to Trump's approach. Trump's approach isn't one in which he has this specific layout, though in his mind he may have certain ideas, and for some countries more specific than others. But this is why he took the approach he did. It was sort of throw the chips in the air and let them fall where they may to some degree, and that is tell everybody, okay, listen, we don't like these. We don't like, we're just getting the raw end of all this stuff. So everybody gets tariffs. And we're doing that as a one-size-fits-all right now. May not be ideal, but one-size-fits-all, so that we can at least start getting a little something back. And that's revenue for our treasury. And, hey, maybe we'll be able to cut taxes on our end. That being said, if you think that you have other ideas that will will change the landscape. You don't like the tariffs that we slap on you, and you want to come to us with some ideas and be like, well, hey, how about we do this instead? Yeah, well, listen, because this isn't about everybody just gets tariffs. It is about the United States of America renegotiating, hitting reset and renegotiating. And while some people would look at this and even have described it, well, it was reckless. I mean, he should have just dealt directly with China. He should have just, why did he have to do it with everyone? Well, a number of different reasons. One, because China wasn't the only country that with which we have issues and trade. Some not much of an issue at all. But it is actually more efficient to do it this way, to hit everyone at once with the change and say, when you're ready, come to us, and then start dealing with that, instead of coming up with 100+ different plans for 100+ different countries and then setting up meetings with 100+ different countries and then trying to start negotiations. You would never get anything done. Because you would have one country, the United States, trying to develop plans for all of these other countries, as opposed to the Trump approach in which all of those countries on their own are coming up with the plans. So you have, one country coming up with a plan, one country coming up with a plan, so they can all do it at the same time. It expedites things. Many hands doing the work, as opposed to just the hands of the United States trying to come up with 100+ different trade deals for 100+ different countries. Makes it go faster. Plus, at the same time, if Trump did take the approach of, okay, well, we're going to just start with China, and we're going to put tariffs on China. Well, China, and China tried to do this, could then work behind the scenes in order to try and circumvent or wait out our tariffs by working out sweet deals with other countries. Well, with the way Trump did things, it made the other countries have to come and try to work out deals. It made these other countries essentially choose between the United States and China, and they chose the United States. I know it's very difficult for a lot of people to accept, but the reality of it is Trump knows what he's doing in approach. And while this doesn't mean that every single one of these countries is going to come to the table with some brilliant plan that benefits the United States wonderfully, but the approach, this is the most effective way and the most efficient way in order to begin the process of deal making, which Trump is very good at. And this is why we're seeing this stuff play out. Based off of Trump's behavior and his history, he understood that things would begin to fall into place, because this is what he's done his entire life, dealing with people, businesses, investments, and recognizing that before you start any sort of massive reconstruction project, which essentially is what he was doing or is doing when it comes to trade for the United States, there's got to be a big breakdown. You have to tear things down. And for a period of time, that looks really bad. And you think, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And I think while a lot of Americans were frustrated because they said, why isn't he talking to us about this? Why isn't he explaining why this is happening? Some of it, of course, he's busy, and maybe some of it, I don't know, arguably he could have been a little more, quote, clear in what he was doing. But ultimately, he knew that as time went on, hopefully sooner than later, we would end up where we're already beginning to end up, and that is, again, I'm looking, right now, and Dow futures rocket higher by 1,000 points after the announcement of the pause between China and the United States. Other positive news, Zelensky agrees to meet with Putin this Thursday. We'll have details on that coming up. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see a slight chance for rain throughout the day, otherwise partly sunny skies with a high near 75. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Tuesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then clearing up with a high near 81. And looking ahead to Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 87.
Memorial Day will be here before you know it, and there will be, of course, there's always different sales, and want to make sure you're in the loop when it comes to our friends at Pennegar Honda Memorial Day deals. New 2025 Honda HR-V, $299 a month, and that's not a lease, that is purchase. New CRV, $398 a month, also not a lease, plus 0.99% APR available on certified pre-owned. So to get less than 1% interest rate on a pre-owned certified vehicle, of course, a fantastic deal. And giving free fuel for the summer with every new car purchase. So you can just drive crazy and not have to worry about it all summer long. That is Pinnagar Honda. You find them on South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. You can also check them out online. Of course, they have that brand new state-of-the-art showroom floor, and it is quite fancy and nice. Pinnagar Honda. Also, KSGF.com, Nick's endorsements. Zelensky agrees to meet with Putin on Thursday. This after the urging of President Donald Trump. Ukrainian President Zelensky agreed yesterday to meet face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Turkey. Putin initially proposed the Thursday meeting to occur this weekend, and President Trump prompted Zelensky to accept the offer. Putin said the talks in Istanbul must be held without preconditions and with the goal of lasting peace. Quote, "We await a full and lasting ceasefire starting from tomorrow to provide the necessary basis for diplomacy. There is no point in prolonging the killings, and I will be waiting for Putin in Turkey on Thursday. Personally, I hope that this time the Russians will not look for excuses," Zelensky wrote. Trump encouraged Zelensky to accept Putin's meeting earlier on Sunday. Ukraine and Russia are currently under a ceasefire marking the anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe. Trump wrote on social media, President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath. Ukraine should agree to this immediately. At least they will be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible, and if not, European leaders and the U.S. will know where everything stands and can proceed accordingly. I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin, who's too busy celebrating the victory of World War II, which could not have been won, not even close, without the United States of America. Have that meeting now, he added. Putin has thus far offered few, if any, concessions, but is now saying talks should address the root causes of the war. He said he would speak to the Turkish President Erdogan later on Sunday about facilitating the negotiations, which he said could result in a ceasefire. Our proposal, as they say, is on the table, Putin said. The decision is now up to the Ukrainian authorities and their curators, who are guiding it, it seems, by their personal political ambitions and not the interests of their people. Now, who knows what will come of this? Highly doubt this is going to be a situation where the two of them come out and say, yes, we have reached this amazing agreement. And while people who hate Trump like to dump on him because he said that he'd start this thing getting done, wrapped up on day one. But that's how Trump talks. But you think about just over 100 days, the difference his election has made when it comes to where things are between Russia and Ukraine. There wasn't even talk. Other than there was some talk after Trump got elected. He hadn't been sworn in yet, but already both sides began talking about being open to some sort of end to this thing. Prior to that, you just really the side-by-side positioning of the Trump approach versus the Biden NATO approach, which was like no stated goal end. There was no one. It was just keep fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. Now, Putin's goal, of course, was to take Ukraine, and Ukraine's goal was to drive Putin out. It was clear that neither of those things were going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. The only real plausible day after day after day outcome was just more people being killed and no real movement. I mean, yeah, okay, so Russia grabs some other town, but then Ukraine gets it back or makes headway into certain areas that have been long established holdouts of Putin's in areas of Ukraine. I mean, so you had a little bit of back and forth, but there wasn't any talk or even expectation that either side was going to end this thing militarily. And you have two ways that something like this comes to a close. One way is one side just wins straight out, which would mean Putin takes Ukraine completely, or Ukraine is able to run Putin out completely, even with our help. And neither of those things were occurring. And neither of those things were on a pathway to where one could reasonably look at it and say, well, if we wait just a little bit longer. I mean, nobody was expecting that. And Trump, you just wish that people who hate Trump could stop for a moment and get past that. And I'm not even saying that this means that Trump's approach is absolutely, by definition, by virtue, correct. But when you get what his perspective is, and that is, there is the path that this thing is on, the only outcome are thousands and thousands of more dead people every single week. Incidentally, one of the big long-term concerns, particularly for Ukraine, is that the segment of the population that would be responsible for the upcoming generations is getting wiped out. You're talking about men, and you start with men without families, and so those are men who would be in the process of starting and having families, and you have this massive gap because you're slaughtering all of these people to where you're going to end up with these big gaps in terms of generation, and that is never a good thing for a culture or society as well, particularly when it comes to the economy. There are a lot of very long-term implications beyond just the nonstop fighting and killing of one another. And Trump is one who looks at something like that and says, well, particularly if we're going to be involved, in the United States, the taxpayers are involved in this. And he recognizes the implications of the NATO situation as well. And so let's just end this thing. And ending it means that both sides are going to have to walk away claiming that they were victorious in some capacity, but they're also going to walk away losers in other capacities. That's what happens whenever you make a deal to end something like this, when you have opposing sides. That's the reality of it. So last week, when you have Joe Biden up there railing on Trump because of the current state of affairs in Ukraine, and I'm thinking to myself, it certainly isn't worse than it was before, because they're just doing exactly what they were doing during the entire Biden years, and that was killing each other day by day. The only difference is both sides are now willing to get together and talk about a way to maybe bring it to an end. It's just such a bizarre thing to watch, or anyone even that was a supporter of the previous administration criticize Trump for what's going on in Ukraine when all of this started back during the previous administration. And the fighting today is the same as it was during the previous administration. And incidentally, it is Trump who has continued to try to put the economic screws to Putin and talk about further sanctions, while the great countries of NATO are funneling money to Russia to continue the fight by way of purchasing their energy. So the characterization by the left that Donald Trump is somehow giving concessions to Putin, and those are our European friends that are doing that. They are the ones who continue to fund this war on both sides. So what will come Thursday? And Trump's approach, incidentally, and this is, again, different than most. He's like, hey, even if they don't come to a deal, at least we'll know that they're not going to come to a deal. We've got to start being realistic about what's going on here. And if they aren't going to come to a deal, then we figure out what to do next. Is that where are we going to cut off funding? Are we going to put the screws to Russia even greater? Is Trump going to have to put pressure once again on our European allies to stop funding Russia's side of this war by purchasing their energy? But until we know whether or not those two are going to be able to cut, or it look like potentially they can come to some sort of close on this thing, we can't move forward with those other decisions. It's just about getting things done, Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. I will say that there's going to be a couple of big sticking points, some of the big ones, I imagine, when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. One, Crimean Peninsula, and the other is NATO membership. And I think already the NATO membership, this is where Putin argued it was his main concern all along, is that increasingly NATO is becoming a threat because if Ukraine becomes a NATO member, then NATO would be obligated to militarily fight against Russia with any sort of conflicts there. And so this is part of Putin's argument that, well, he's doing this in a defensive manner. Because his offensive nature would cause NATO to be forced to become defensive, and so that's been a large part of his argument. I think that Trump recognized that there's no way Putin would agree to that. Ukraine becoming a member of NATO would escalate things, and there really weren't any European. I mean, it's not like NATO has been saying, yes, we want Ukraine to be part of NATO. Trump isn't out of line. He's not out of step here. But what he's doing is what leaders do, and saying out loud and recognizing the reality of things. And NATO wants to they want it to kind of be known that, yeah, we're not going to bring Ukraine in, but they don't want to be taking a real hard line on it because they don't want to make Putin and so it just becomes this mushy mess of things. And Trump's approach is, listen, we all know Ukraine is not going to become a member of NATO. So let's just get that. Let's just all acknowledge that and move forward from there. So then what can we do? The desire by Zelensky to become a member of NATO was for security purposes. And so this is where the mineral rights deal comes in. This is where the Trump administration has demonstrated that, listen, you want to know that if Russia puts the screws to you, they try to invade again or invade further after a peace or whatever the situation may be, that you will have some sort of backing. Well, the United States and these corporations that the United States will rely on, because when we're talking about some of these minerals, we are talking about national security issues, that is going to result in it benefiting the U.S. for Russia not to be hassling you. And Russia will know that as well. So not only does it give you a sense of security that the United States is tied to your economic independence, but it's also a message to Russia that diminishes the likelihood that they may try to be hostile towards you in the future. So that's the selling point for that. Now, the argument is, well, Putin may not care. He may do it anyway. Well, yes, that's true. If Ukraine became a member of NATO, you could still make that argument. But this is about moving things forward, and that is where that end of things is moving forward with the security desires from Zelensky's perspective. Putin's going to want to keep the Crimean Peninsula. From Trump's perspective, and I think this is legitimate, that is not an issue of this last incursion or this last war, if you will. That's something that happened over a decade ago during the Obama years. And no European nation did anything about it. No, Ukraine didn't even do anything about it. They're like, hey, we don't like this. They didn't even fight. They just sat back, let it happen. The Obama administration, with John Kerry as Secretary of State, said somebody needs to tell Putin he can't just do that. Well, he did do it, and that's because everybody let him. And Zelensky had never, all of this time when Trump was president the first time, and during, the Obama years leading up to it, Zelensky wasn't talking about we need to get them out of Crimea and, that is something that we have to get back. That has not been an issue. Now, I'm not claiming that means that that's right. But you can see where if I'm Trump, I would say, listen, that ship sailed. And you spent over a decade seemingly not even caring about the fact that they took the Crimean Peninsula. So you sort of by default already gave that up. You already surrendered that to Russia when you were like, hey, okay. May not have been the best decision, and arguably it may not have been a good time for them to. They may not have militarily been able to get backing in order to fight back. They may have lobbied in order to get allies to help them and failed, but that is something that happened over a decade ago. And I think that is an area that Putin can walk away feeling like he is a winner, which is something he needs to do. And then you get Zelensky, the security aspect of the mineral deals, and those are just two of the – I think those are the two big sticking points in there right now. And with those pillars out of the way, I think it's one of the reasons Trump thinks that something can move forward with these two. But, again, time will tell. They are going to be meeting, at least as it stands today, on Thursday, and that is going to be happening in Turkey. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. On our hardscapes and outdoor, most of us have, some of you, probably live in apartments, and oftentimes apartments are near parks, or you've got a swimming pool, so you have that outdoor inviting area. But if you have a home with a piece of land, you pay for that land. You know how much land costs, even if it's just a quarter of an acre. I mean, those lots are very expensive, yet we don't really utilize them, do we? We don't turn them into living spaces as we oftentimes can. Well, that's what Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor does. They turn those outdoor areas that otherwise is maybe nice and pretty grass, but an area that you can entertain, an area you can relax, you can sit and maybe have a cigar at the end of the evening and sit there with the family or by yourself, listen to the music, built-in sound system, part of the design from Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, water features, lighting features, maybe an outdoor movie theater setup situation. Whatever it is that you can dream up, they can design it for you, and maybe you don't even know. This is how my situation, because I don't know what I don't know. These are people that are visionary, and whenever I had the visit at my home, I was like, here's what I like to smoke on the Traeger. I'd like to get a Blackstone. I don't have one right now because I don't have an area for it. I'd like to be able to have some friends over and just sort of explain what I want to utilize it for, and then they come up with a plan option. And that's what they can do for you. Now, I recommend that if you're thinking about it maybe for the fall, do it now, because with the process of designing, and in addition to that, the work that they do, they have quite a few jobs that they are working right now. So it's not something that they're going to be able to get to next week for you. Look ahead, look to the future, reach out to them now if you're thinking about, end of summer or fall. That way you have it done and ready to go when you're ready. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, you can find them at hunterhardscapes.com. Also, Nick's endorsements, KSGF.com. There was a second outage Friday. Another air traffic control outage at Newark Liberty International Airport, of course, the second in 2 weeks. We talked about this last week. And a number of the workers that have taken, is it 45 days off? I think 45 days off because of stress of the outage. So now, given that all of those people are already gone for a month and a half, I don't know what this. I mean, in all seriousness, you're already down a number of people, and I don't know that we ever saw final numbers. But given the talk about being short-staffed, any one person that is going to have paid time off for 45 days because of stress of the situation is going to be a burden. Well, now already down whatever that number is, are the air traffic control people who dealt with this particular outage, or are they also going to need that period of time off? And if so, what does that look like? And God forbid, what if there's another one of these outages? The FAA did issue a ground stop at the airport after the outage occurred due to construction. In audio captured at liveatc.net, an air traffic controller told a FedEx plane that our scopes just went black again. The unidentified controller said, if you care about this, contact your airline and try to get some pressure for them to fix this stuff. Meanwhile, a controller informed a private aircraft of a brief radar outage and advised that if communication is lost again, the pilot should just maintain an altitude of or at or above 3,000 feet until passing Morristown, after which they could proceed with the approach. Roughly 401 flights to and from Newark were delayed, with 140 canceled. The FAA said there was a telecommunications outage that impacted communications and radar display at Philadelphia TRACON Area C, which guides aircraft in and out of Newark Liberty International Airport airspace. The outage occurred around 3:55 a.m. on Friday, May 9th, lasted approximately 90 seconds. So it sounds like, at least in terms of the amount of, or the period of time, 90 seconds, that it's pretty similar to what occurred prior to that. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said she was in touch with the Department of Transportation monitoring the issue. Now, of course, you've got Democrats demanding immediate action, and, yeah, something does need to be done. There's no doubt about it. And Duffy has said, as have others within the administration, that this is top priority. The thing with this administration is when they talk about something being top priority, again, this is Donald Trump, it's something that it really does become a top priority. It isn't like, well, the previous administration that talked about this being a top priority, but nothing ever got done. Nothing. And it wasn't just upgrading air traffic control, but you look at high-speed internet, for example, the billions and billions and billions of dollars they spent, and there wasn't a single household, not one single household that ended up with that high-speed internet access. You look at the high-speed rail projects that the government always involves itself in, and you spend all this money and nothing to show for it. So the Trump administration, I do believe, is going to get this upgraded. It's unfortunate for the Trump administration. It is happening on their time frame here, because it's like 9/11. The Democrats like to point fingers at the Bush administration and claim somehow that it was the lack of awareness during the Bush years that caused 9/11 to occur, when in fact that was something years and years and years in the making, well before the Bush administration came along. And it's the same when it comes to these antiquated systems and the lack of necessary upgrades that many of the government entities use. Just because the problem is really rising to the surface now, it doesn't mean that it hasn't been a problem all this time. Most of the time when things start breaking down, it is a long time coming. And that is, of course, what we're seeing when it comes to this air traffic control stuff. But, yeah, I mean, you talk about something that you need to get as an absolute top priority. Not only because you're talking about people's lives here, but it just really looks bad when this stuff occurs as well. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447-KSGF. We should be chatting with Congressman Burleson in the upcoming hour, as there is a renewed focus on tax cut potentials, budgets, and so forth. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. We should be talking with Congressman Burleson coming up. Also, one of the items that some of these stories I just love because Democrats are incapable of taking a measured approach. The media is incapable or unwilling to take a measured approach and an intellectual approach to certain things that occur. And Qatar, the country, offered Trump, or the presidency, the Trump administration, not Trump as a person, but a new flying palace that he could have as Air Force One. And some of this is because Boeing, like during the previous administration, during Trump, not previous Biden, but previous Trump administration, a deal was signed that locked in Boeing at a certain price and a certain time frame, and they're $2 billion over already, and the plane is nowhere in sight. And so I think a combination of that occurring, and Qatar is like, "Hey, we'll give you a plane," and Trump's like, "Yeah, all right." And once Trump's no longer president, then it would become part of his presidential library, which is those are funded by private donations, but they're run by the government. It's the National Archives that run it. And, of course, I mean, just the left is going apoplectic over this. Like, he's being bought, he's taking gifts from, it's not Trump, it's the presidency. And it's, the executive branch. This isn't the first time that this sort of thing has happened. I don't know if you're familiar with that Statue of Liberty. That was a gift from another country. We have received gifts from other countries before, some smaller in nature, some that are larger. This clearly is a larger one. But, and I admit on the surface at first I thought, well, gosh, that seems kind of, I don't know about that. But then you start thinking about it and breaking it down, and you're like, well, I mean, again, we've accepted gifts in the past from foreign countries. We've given gifts to other countries in the past. This isn't something that is, going to be Trump's. He will utilize it as president, and then the National Archives will have control over it as part of the presidential library. And I think, well, okay, it's not out of line of the way things have worked in the past. But, of course, the media and the Democrats just pulling their hair out already over it's a bribe. They're giving them a bribe. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on here. So we'll talk about that later on in the program as well. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today, we'll see a slight chance for rain throughout the day, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 75. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Tuesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then clear sunny skies with a high near 81. And looking ahead to Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 87.
Congressman Burleson is with us this morning. How do you do, sir? Good. Good. It's good to hear. I'm glad that you're doing great. I take it that means only fantastic positive news in terms of budget and tax cuts and spending cuts. And how was Mother's Day? Let's start with the important stuff. Yeah, yeah. What did you smoke anything? What did you do? Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. Uh, well, your girls are old enough to mow. Maybe not in a straight line, but uh, I'm not amazed, I guess, but some of the problems that seem to pop up when it comes to funding, it just makes me shake my head. And last week there was a piece in the Federalist about how it's been discovered there was an undercover journalist posing as a 16-year-old girl calling different Planned Parenthood facilities about getting hormone blockers, and found that they were, telling what they thought was a 16-year-old, oh yeah, your parents don't need to know, and oh, you haven't seen a doctor, don't worry. And in one instance, offering from she claimed as a 16-year-old that just the prior week she had thought about maybe looking into transgenderism, and they were ready to give her the medication the next day. And of course, there's always been the abortion issue as well. But then I see that some Republicans, they're worried that some Republicans will balk at defunding Planned Parenthood. And I'm like, what on earth? Mm. Which it does. Yeah. Yeah.
Tax dollars, and it just made me sick. I have a call scheduled with them, and today I'm gonna ask them, since when did we become the party
Right.
that's defending Planned Parenthood?
Well, not just
Since,
defending, but forcing taxpayers to pay for it.
exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
insane
So
part.
this is something that, I mean, we're fighting. The problem that I face, and I have been facing this my entire political career, is that leadership caters
Yeah.
to the people that are in the purple districts.
Right.
And they let the tail wag the dog. You let people from New York and their values dictate what we're going to pass, because they start screaming whenever you about a bill and say, well, you won't be able to get elected, and if we can't get elected, then you won't be in the majority. And so they basically hold the rest of the conference hostage, and I'm sick of it.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of Americans are. And I mean, I go back to, what did they not get about Trump getting elected? I get it. I understand that every congressional district is different. And simply because Trump had this overwhelming victory, that doesn't mean that they in their particular districts won't have a hard time with a vote in which they when they vote to cut, Planned Parenthood spending. But to me, the approach is you get them in line as speaker and you tell them you're going to support this, but don't worry, we will pour as much money into your campaign as you need. And we will make sure, hell or high water, that you win re-election. That's the way that Mike John or whomever is making these decisions. That should be the approach. And I don't know. It's very frustrating.
It is, and I think that so now the only way to fight that, Nick, is to be more of a fly in the ointment than they are, and to be more difficult, and to be and basically, and it means that just be prepared. Like I may have to step up and take a bunch of hits from Trump, those kind of things in order to push back.
And this is where I get frustrated. And I know obviously you do as well. Whenever conservatives who are standing up for what the Republican Party claims it's for, and that holds things up, they're accused of holding the party hostage. But whenever you get a handful of Republicans that want to force taxpayers to fund abortions and sex change drugs for kids, and they hold everything up because of it, they never get criticized. They don't get accused of holding the Republican Party or Congress hostage for funding, in order to fund abortions. And they're the ones that are out of line with the Republican Party or the platform.
Yep. It's been happening. It's something I've had to deal with since being first elected, even in the Missouri House.
I don't know how you do it.
It's a frustration.
I don't know how you do it.
Frustration.
What I do understand is how Republicans, they run for the first time and they run on all this stuff, and then they get there, whether it's Jeff City or Washington, D.C., and they change. And I understand that because of the environment overrides their convictions. But then there are the very few that are just, and I don't know what it is, stubbornness or just ultra convicted, whatever it may be, like you, that don't give up your convictions and you do continue to stand for the things that you were elected to stand for. And I don't know how you do it year after year after year.
Yeah, I get more frustrated with some of the members of my own party.
Oh, sure, yeah, that's what I mean.
For example, like this, than I do people who are Democrats.
Yeah. Because
they campaigned and they did exactly what they campaigned on, right? And I don't, I totally disagree with you. I totally, am not going to support your position, but yet I at least have some respect for you, but we have the situation we have is people that act based on fear and getting reelected. And that's something that I cannot stand. Yeah. It's not based on principle. It's not based on doing the right thing. It's making sure that you continue to come back to this job each and every time. That's what's more frustrating than anything.
Are there any real big sticking points in this that you think are going to be the struggle?
I think that the fact that I think the big struggle is that it looks like they're shaping up to present something that's going to be out of balance by about $1 trillion over a 10-year period. So they're looking to cut spending, the tax cuts, and we'll find out today. We have a conference call with Ways and Means. It's anticipated that it's going to be $5 trillion. But when you account for the fact that we're not coming up with the Medicaid cuts that are necessary to pay for the Trump tax cuts, we're going to be about $1 trillion out of whack. That's like the early reports that I'm hearing. Hopefully that's not the case, but we've made it very clear. A lot of us have made it very clear that we're not going to. We want the tax cuts. We want all of them. I want as many as possible. I want to cut Medicaid to make it happen. Not cutting benefits. You don't even have to cut the benefits for individuals who need it. Again, we talked about this before, but you've got to focus on the waste, fraud, and abuse. There's plenty of it, and there's a lot of money laundering that's happening. and we could fund all of Trump's agenda if we just ended the money laundering that states are doing, states like New York and California. But unfortunately, these New Yorkers got their way,
Yeah.
and we're holding New York harmless and California harmless. And so,
Will you
while at the same
will you
go ahead.
explain that? Because I know I'm familiar with how they're with matching funds, but when you talk about the money laundering aspect of this, that you have states like California doing, explain that.
So what they're doing is and Missouri does it to a very small degree, but it doesn't make it, okay.
Right.
But California and New York have figured out how to turn this into just absolutely hyperscale, and that is they go to like the managed care companies, the insurance companies, and they say we're going to the state of New York taxes their insurance companies like 10% on all the expenses, right? And then they take that money and they use it to draw down federal dollars, and then they draw down the federal dollars, and then they reimburse those same insurance companies exactly what they took from them.
And those
And so
federal dollars are matching, right? There's a certain degree, and they know that, so that it's a way for them to pull in those federal dollars.
that's right. Yeah. And so this is how California funded 9 million illegal immigrants being on Medicaid. And it's how New York is paying for its bloated system. In fact, there's a lawsuit that's happening and a bunch of legal things that are going on between a hospital system in New York and over this whole, money laundering scheme. So it's something that I think that we need to correct. We need to end it. Even if you had to phase it out, it's the right thing to do. But unfortunately, right now, the New York members got their way, and we're not gonna fix this money laundering problem.
We are talking with Congressman Burleson. Last question I'll ask you, and then anything else that you want to add. I keep hearing that one of the areas which seem like a no-brainer in order to save money is what is really corporate welfare for a lot of Green New Deal stuff. And this, for a lot of people, it's almost like Obamacare, where you had Republicans when they weren't in power pointing out what a waste and how it just adds to inflation it is. But now that they are in power, they don't want to undo it or undo parts of it because some of that money is going to red states. What's the situation there?
So people were fighting us on this. They didn't want to. They didn't want to cut the Biden's Green New scam completely because they have donors and other individuals who benefit from it. But I think that the good news is on this front, we're going to get a significant portion, if not most, of this be repealed. So that is one portion that's a win. And so in some aspects, it's going to be phased out. In some, it's going to be cut off immediately. And then I think that there's I think the ethanol people are going to get their way, and their program isn't going to be eliminated. But at least the majority of the IRA Green New Scam stuff is going to be repealed.
Anything else before we let you go?
Nope. It's going to be a busy week, and so I'll be focused on that. I've got a lot of UAP stuff this week.
All right.
I'll be going first thing tomorrow into a SCIF meeting with Aero, and then with the FBI. So it should be interesting.
Congressman Burleson, as always, it is a pleasure, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Nick. Have a great week.
All right, you do the same. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. You got home loan needs, you got refinancing needs, you got reverse mortgage needs, you got needs in any of those areas, not just the execution, but decision making. Like, you don't know what you don't know oftentimes. You may have a locked in interest rate of around 3% from several years ago, and boy, you think you need to downgrade or upgrade, or you just want to move. You want to get out in the country or maybe closer to in town, whatever it may be. But, man, interest rates are like 7%. I'm going to lose that. It's like getting a great parking space, right? You don't want to lose it. I don't want to move it because then I'm going to lose it. But there may be instances in which you come out ahead. And you're still putting equity in your home at the same time. So these are oftentimes decisions that are a little more involved than simply looking at a number like that. But that's where the characters in the team can come in and provide you any sort of advice that you may need when it comes to home loans, refinancing, reverse mortgage. And it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see a slight chance for rain throughout the day, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 75. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Tuesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then clear sunny skies with a high near 81. And looking at Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 87. And Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air, spring is in full swing, and whether you need an AC tune-up before that warmer weather hits, or maybe you're a person who suffers from allergies and you just need indoor air quality testing to help reduce those allergens, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air are the go-to guys for all of your HVAC needs. For over 35 years, the Foreman team, they have been bringing their HVAC expertise to our community. They offer residential services, commercial services, and they also have a 24/7 emergency service line because they know that things pop up after hours. I've used Foreman Mechanical quite a few times, and they're honestly quick, fast, and affordable. So for all of those HVAC needs, reach out to Russell and his team today. Now you can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line regarding the conversation with Congressman Burleson earlier. Someone asked, who cares what states vote 80-20 threaten? I can see what purple states care, why they care. This is just a cop-out for weaker Republicans. Now, what this is in reference to, and talking about a number of, just a small number of Republicans that are pushing back against defunding abortions for Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood has increasingly become peddlers in irreversible sex change medicines and hormone blockers for underage kids, even undercover operations have shown, which is no surprise. And Congressman Burleson noted that it's the tail wagging the dog, that here what happens is you will have, and he noted he was on a call with a congressman, Republican from New York, that got on the call specifically to make sure, now we're not going to defund Planned Parenthood, right? Now what they say is, we'll make sure it's not used for abortions. Well, it doesn't work that way. If you fund an institution and that institution provides certain services, you're funding those services. Now, you may say, well, no, because we earmark it right over here. Well, whatever money that would be going there, if you didn't have the earmark there, that money is then freed up in order to go for the other thing. That's what that means, fungible. So let's say, for example, I'm someone who has a drug habit, and I'm asking you for money, and you're like, no, because I don't want to, pay for your drug habit. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm going to use it to pay rent. And so you give me the money, and yes, technically, I then hand that over to the landlord, but the money if you hadn't given me that money, the money that I would have had to have given the landlord, I then use that in order to buy drugs. So it's just a joke, this idea that you can give an institution like Planned Parenthood money and that is kept separate from providing abortions or sex change operations. What happens is you have a number of, just very few Republicans that say, no, I live in a purple district, and if I'll get hammered for this. If I vote to cut off funding for Planned Parenthood, I'll get hammered. And then, this is the leverage that they use, they tell the leadership, and if I lose, and then, this congressperson over here and this congressperson over here who's in the same situation I'm in, and they lose to Democrats because we vote to cut off that funding, then Republicans lose control of Congress altogether. So they hold the party hostage with that threat. Now, it doesn't mean that that threat doesn't have some reality to it. But this is what I believe leadership should do in the Republican Party, because of what you claim the Republican Party stands for. You get those people in line, and you tell them you're going to vote for this anyway, but we will make sure you have as much money as you need for campaign ads and everything else. We will put all of our efforts behind getting you reelected. Now, to me, that makes sense, because why? Because all you are doing is expecting your members to comply with what it is as a party you say that you stand for if you get elected. The Republican Party claims to be pro-life. This isn't even about, when it comes to this funding bill, shutting down Planned Parenthood or shutting down abortions where they're still taking place. This is about just whether or not you and I as taxpayers, when we go to work, we should have to go to work in order to pay for them. This is such a no-brainer. You don't even have to be pro-life, and you could still recognize, well, but that's not really something taxpayers should have to pay for. So to have a Republican Party and leadership that is incapable, at least, we don't know how this is going to pan out. We'll wait to see whether or not those Republicans will get their way, and if we are still forced to pay for Planned Parenthood procedures, or if it goes the other direction. But if you are the leader of a party when it comes to the very basic fundamentals of what the party says it stands for, and the vast majority is all in compliance with that, but you have a few to cater for the few for the sake of keeping power, at some point one begins to ask, well, what's the point in being in power if you are going to forsake the reasons that you say that you want to be in power? And that's where a lot of Republicans get frustrated and, frankly, disenfranchised. you end up, while desperate to cling to some of those moderate voters and keep pro-abortion Republicans in office, you lose enthusiasm amongst more conservative Republicans. And that is incidentally how the party becomes more to the left over time. I found this story about the Pope's brother.
Oh, yeah?
This is a... Now, this has really nothing to do with the Pope, but you know how the left is. And so I guess the new Pope, Pope Leo, his brother, whose name is Louis Prevost, and he's 73 years old, he has made a number of social media postings that apparently have some people on the left very upset. Now, again, in the context of the Pope, it doesn't really make any difference, but it is, I think, somewhat amusing. This headline, for example, new Pope Leo's brother shared post calling Nancy Pelosi a drunk C-word. One of Pope Leo's brothers put up a series of pro-Trump posts online and shared one that called Representative Nancy Pelosi a drunk C-word before his sibling was elected pontiff, according to a report. A cache of Facebook post from Louis Prevost, 73, indicate the Pope's eldest sibling is an ardent MAGA fan who has no love for Democrats, including the former House Speaker, according to the Daily Beast, which is left-wing. In one lewd post, he reportedly shared a video of Pelosi speaking in 1996 with the caption, quote, "These effing liberals crying about tariffs is just unreal. Do they not know that there's a thing called video? Just listen to what this drunk C-word has to say in the mid-90s, long before her husband had a Grindr date, or Grindr dates, which Grindr is, it's a gay dating app, right?
I think so.
I think it's specifically for gay men. Well, he really got a lot in there, didn't he? Well, the posting was a video of her supporting tariffs, of course, and so he just was very, very colorful in the description of her. I love it, before her husband had Grindr dates. In other reported social media screeds, he called for Democrats to be arrested for treason for meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Louis Prevost, who is a resident of Florida, also shared a meme that has a picture of a mental institution with the caption, "Where the woke lived before the 70s," according to the outlet. He additionally complimented Vice President J.D. Vance for his debate performance against Tim Walz on the campaign trail last summer, which is in contrast to a retweet his brother, Leo, formerly known as Robert Francis Prevost, shared the year critical of Vance, or this year. Attempts to reach Prevost were not immediately successful Sunday evening. He consistently claimed in other posts that the Democrat Party is filled with communists and suggested in one missive that before, quote, lefties took over and ruined our schools, they would have been tarred, feathered, and rode out of town on a donkey or worse, shot or strung up for screwing with people's lives so much. The unearthed Facebook post give further insight into the new Pope's background and his family after he was selected the first American to lead the Catholic Church. Leo, Louis, and their other brother John grew up in the Chicago suburb of Dalton, Illinois, with Louis recalling the Pope was always seeking peace. Louis telling the New York Times, "Geez, it was just like yesterday. I was throwing him down the stairs, and now he's Pope," end quote. What a quote. That's the quote that you give as I was just throwing him down the stairs the other day.
Now he's the Pope.
Now he's the Pope. He also gave his thoughts on what type of Pope his brother will be. Quote, "I think he's going to be similar to Pope Francis, but maybe not quite as liberal-minded, flexing the church rules quite so much. I think he'd be a little more conservative." Leo's other brother, John, made headlines last week for more mundane reasons when he revealed that the U.S.-born pontiff is a Chicago White Sox fan instead of a supporter of the Cubs. Politics aside, Louis Prevost has been beaming since Leo's ascension to Pope, saying, "As soon as a church official went Ro, my mind blew up because I knew Ro was going to turn into Roberto, and sure enough, Roberto Francisco," he explained to CBS News of the new Pope, "and I went nuts. I lost it. My mind blown. My little brother just made Pope. Oh my God, what do I do? How do I act? Do I have to change the way I live? I better behave now." and maybe delete some of those past. Well, it's on the internet. It lasts forever. I heard somebody say, I think it was I don't know where it was, someone read it, and I thought it was kind of funny that being a White Sox fan, that they believed, how did they word this? There were indications that this Pope was going to be very Christ-like because as a White Sox fan, he, like Jesus, also likes to associate with losers. That's pretty clever. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Dan Bongino making post or taking to X on Saturday, providing some updates on what it is that the FBI is working on, and his updates. It's sort of a, hey, we're working on it. No real details other than keeping people in the loop regarding some of these different investigations, Epstein files being one of them. And I think he understands what a lot of average Americans are wondering about when it comes to these investigations because he was so in tune with them for so long as a talk show host. When even you're a Kash Patel or Pam Bondi, you've got your convictions and you know what needs to be done in order to clean up corruption. But if you're there every single day, you kind of forget that the average American we don't know what's going on. And so we're like, we haven't heard anything about Epstein. What happened with Epstein? What happened with this? What happened with that? And I think Dan Bongino, given that he was a radio talk show host for that significant period of time, he understands still what it is that people are interested in. And that's part of the reason he probably recognizes it's important to keep people at least understanding, hey, we're working on it. This is something that is underway. According to his posting, he says that the FBI is being cooperative on sensational cases that previous FBI directors clearly slammed the lid on when it comes to releasing information. He listed several highly publicized cases, writing on X, "We're clearing information to Congress and the public as quickly as possible. In just the couple of months since we've sworn in, we've responded to requests for information on the attack on Representative Scalise." There were a number of Republicans that were attacked that day, but he was the one that suffered, the member of Congress that suffered the most. This was the Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer that went to try to kill as many Republicans as possible. He said that they've responded to requests for information on the Nashville attack. This one of great interest. It was the trans student that had a manifesto, and the Biden administration did everything it could to keep it under wraps. And a little bit got leaked out, and it was clear that this individual was motivated largely by the talking points of the Democrats, because that's what that manifesto sounded like. The white privilege and Christians. And it's just the rhetoric that you hear from the Democrats and the media quite often was the rationale that individual, according to her writings, caused her to try to kill as many of those students as possible. And there's been a great deal of question about that as well, the full manifesto. And who made the decision within the FBI to try and cover up for their motivation? How were those discussions made? Did they openly, I'm curious about it. And that's corruption that needs to be vetted out. Also, Crossfire Hurricane. He says that they are looking into that. Crossfire Hurricane is the name of the operation of the FBI trying to overthrow the first Trump presidency. The COVID cover-up and more. He said, we are working with the DOJ on the Epstein case, and as the Attorney General stated, there are voluminous amounts of downloaded child sexual abuse material that we are dealing with. The former New York cop and podcaster also had a warning for predators illegally in the U.S., saying the workforce has been working overtime on task force operations to remove dangerous illegal aliens from the country. That work continues. The message is clear. If you came here illegally to prey on our citizens, your days here are numbered. And he called crimes against children an FBI priority, writing that Operation Restoring Justice, where we locked up child predators and 764 subjects in every part of the country, is just the beginning. We're going to take your freedom if you take away a child's innocence. Think twice if you're targeting children, because you are next. But don't worry, if you do get caught, you will have Democrat members of Congress coming to your defense. In fact, most recently on Friday, there were some arrests. A mayor of a New Jersey town, a member of Congress, attempting to storm an ICE facility to get in to see, among others, child rapists and murderers that are members of MS-13. So this fevered pitch of love and admiration that some elected Democrats have for these people that are horrible people, has come to a fevered pitch and resulted in some arrest. And one member of Congress attacking, it's on video, she's attacking law enforcement. She's lucky that she didn't get the Ashley Babbitt treatment, who didn't even physically attack or come close to any law enforcement, yet she was executed inside the Capitol, and her executioner was hailed by Democrats as a hero. So some of these Democrat members of Congress that like to try to storm these ICE facilities, can you imagine if they were treated the same way as Ashley Babbitt, a veteran, was treated? Just executed? No weapon? Not within any sort of proximity in which the Capitol Hill police officer's life was in danger. What is her name? It was some gal I'd never heard of before. She's a bit of a tank, and she was using her body in order to slam into some of these law enforcement officials and these ICE agents. McIver. LaMonica McIver was her name, along with Democrat New Jersey Representative Rob Menendez Jr. I believe that is the son of former Senator Menendez, who is in jail currently, or his wife is in jail. I'm not sure the exact status there. One Republican member of Congress noted that they didn't blame the New Jersey Democrat because he was probably just looking for his dad. But, again, much different rules for different people. Republicans, if you are a Trump supporter and you're in the Capitol without a permit, you get shot to death. But if you are a Democrat member of Congress, you can assault a police officer and then go on CNN the next day and essentially brag about it and blame them, which is what she did, claiming that they are the ones who caused it to be a problem because they did not allow her and other Democrats to storm into the facility without being stopped. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. So this was Friday at an ICE facility where, among others, illegal gang immigrants, gang members being held, some convicted murderers, rapists, and for whatever reason, the party that refused, you may recall Trump's this year when he had his address before Congress, and there was that 12, 13-year-old boy who survived cancer, wanted to be a police officer. This is the party that refused to even acknowledge him, yet they will fly across the world in order to try to meet with and lionize wife beaters and you got to understand, as Democrats, normal people do not understand this. And so now they went to this facility in New Jersey, Delaney Hall facility. You had the Newark mayor, Ross Baraka. You had Democrat Representative Lamonka McIver. And there were some others as well. And they attacked law enforcement. They tried to storm their way in order to, I guess, rescue these rapists and child molesters. One of the quote from the classy Congresswoman LaMonica was, quote, "I touch whoever I want, mother effer," whenever she was being told to stop assaulting police officers. So this, again, is the Democrat Party 2025. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. We will be broadcasting live from the beautiful, white, sandy beaches, crystal clear waters of Cancun, November 9th through the 15th. Well, we'll be there during that period of time. We'll be broadcasting 3 days from there, and you can join us. I know many of you are going to be joining us, and it's just going to be a great time. Wonderful. There is still a chance for you to get signed up. We'll have to get a hold of Cam today, find out where things are.
Yeah, I sent her an email over the weekend, so I'm sure she'll probably message me here in a couple of hours and give me an update. But the last update was there was 6 spots left.
Okay, all right. So it's a great time.
It's so much fun.
It is a great time. Who was I talking to? I have these conversations with frequency. So a guy was asking, how much is it? And it was on Friday. It was during the Friday Road Show. And I was telling him, it's like $19.99 a person for Garden View, and that covers your flight. It's like, well, how long? It was 6 nights, and it's all-inclusive resort, and that covers the airfare and transportation. I mean, just everything. And he's like, well, that's a great deal. I was like, yeah, it is. It is a great deal. Part of it is the built-in fun. If you want to enjoy the camaraderie of us and doing the show, and we do a catamaran. But I just want to stress, because I know sometimes people, I can understand if you've not been on one, like, well, like the whole time are we going to be expected like to do this? Like, all right, everyone meet for breakfast at 7 a.m. No, that's not what it is at all. It really is just like if you're going with a bunch of people you know, and you're like, we're just going to spend all the time in our room, or we're going to go ATVing through the jungles on some sort of adventure, or we're going to just spend the entire time in the ocean by ourselves. That's cool. Or if you want to hang out, I mean, it's all very organic and it's fun. It's a good time. And you have a liquor cabinet in your room, so you can just be in there the whole time if you want to. That's one of the things about this resort line, and it was a first for us last trip, a different location, but also it was a Riu Palace resort, and that is the liquor cabinets in the rooms, in addition to the your little mini fridge that you have, and all that's covered. Room service is covered, everything, so you don't have to worry about getting out your wallet for those extras. You just live it up. It's like you get to be rich for about a week. Get to live like rich people. Some of you who do go, you may be rich. You get to watch the rest of us pretend to like live life just like you do, with room service all the time, because that's what rich people do. They just sit around and have room service nonstop. That's it.
24/7.
Yeah, 24/7. That's how they get wealthy, is just doing that, right? Details, KSGF.com, including how to get signed up. Cam's info is there, so you can reach out to her. And the final payment isn't due until July, so you've got a couple of months in order to make those payments after you put in your deposit if you want to. Coming up, Trump defending the $400 million flying palace offered as a gift from Qatar. Now, this, of course, as you can imagine, and the media is just going to go nuts over this one, which makes it somewhat enjoyable to watch. But like most things, a couple weeks from now, there'll be something new for them to pitch a fit over, while normal Americans just go about living their lives. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for rain throughout the day, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 75. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Tuesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then clear sunny skies with a high near 81. And looking ahead to Wednesday, sunny with a high near 87.
All right. So, Trump administration poised to accept palace in the sky as a gift for Trump from Qatar sources. Trump poised to accept Qatar jet gift as Air Force One. Let's see. Here's the ABC. Jonathan Karl, Catherine Fowler's on it. Takes two people to write the story. And what may be the most valuable gift ever extended to the United States from a foreign government? The Trump administration is preparing to accept a super luxury Boeing 747-8 jumbo jet from the royal family of Qatar, a gift that is to be available for the use by the president as the new Air Force One until shortly before he leaves office, at which time ownership of the plane will be transferred to the Presidential Library Foundation. Sources familiar with the proposed arrangement told ABC. And for those that don't know, it'll be the Trump Presidential Library. Presidents have these libraries. They are funded privately, but they are run by the National Archives. So it's not, it's just like any other sort of gift to the country. It will not be something that is accepted by Trump as a private citizen. The very first line of this is telling, and that is, it in what may be the most valuable gift ever extended to the United States from a foreign government. And the reason I say that is because this is not the first time that a foreign country has given a gift to the United States of America. See, this is where the fun comes into play. The initial reaction, of course, is, look, Trump's taking these big gifts. Look, he's being bought off. He's being bought off by the royal family of some Middle Eastern country. First off, it's just really pleasurable to watch people who defended the Biden family taking gifts like diamonds and new cars and tens of millions of dollars funneled through LLCs and then ending up in these bank accounts for, 11 different Biden family members with absolutely, and personal, by the way, not a gift to the U.S. government. The diamond from the wife of Moscow's mayor that went to Hunter Biden and the new car that he got from whichever oligarch, those weren't for government usage. And all we heard was, well, there's no proof that's a payoff. I mean, okay, well, what was it for? Well, consulting. Oh. The people who spent years telling us that there was no evidence whatsoever suddenly have this grave concern about the United States receiving a gift from a foreign country. Now, this isn't anything secret, and it's not anything new. Have you ever heard of the Statue of Liberty? Yeah, that was a gift to the United States, foreign country. Well, this is going to Trump. It's going to the president of the United States. And yes, Trump is the president, but he doesn't keep it. I did see a headline that, I think it was Newsweek. Trump to be gifted Boeing, which he'll keep when he leaves office. He doesn't keep it. It goes to the presidential library, which is run, again, by the federal government. You know, we've received different gifts from other countries. We received at one point a couple of pandas from China. The Resolute desk we hear so much about in the Oval Office, that was a gift from another country. I don't know who was president at the time, but that was a gift. You know, do you remember the imagery? It was a 9/11 monument of that giant tear.
Uh-huh.
And that, I think it was erected, may have even been in New Jersey. Do you know who we got that? That wasn't us. That was a gift. Do you know what country gifted us that?
Was it Russia?
It was Russia. And in fact, Vladimir Putin was at the groundbreaking ceremony here in the United States when the gift was given to the United States.
Well, that's different.
Of course it's different, right? That's back whenever, I don't know, Republicans were supposed to give up their Cold War mentality and embrace Putin. So none of this is anything new. The United States, while it isn't, common, particularly the size and the scope of this particular gift, but it is the Trump derangement syndrome. It is the automatic instinct without thinking through things. And listen, here's my approach. When I first saw it, I'll admit, and maybe you too, you're like, oh, that's a Middle Eastern country giving Trump I don't know. Is that right? I don't know. That just seems like the sort of thing that, yeah, I know it doesn't make any difference with Trump. It's not like Trump is going to behave differently because of it. Trump's got planes. It's one thing about being as wealthy as Trump is you don't really have to worry about them being bought off because they don't have to be. This is one of the reason so many people like Donald Trump is that he doesn't owe anybody anything because he doesn't need anything from anybody. And so the only people he's beholden to are the American people. But even if you recognize that it's not like Air Force One, something that Trump doesn't have to pay for anyhow, being replaced or updated with a plane that comes from another country, even though that isn't going to cause any sort of undue influence, I think that it's normal for a person, because that's not something that happens all the time, to go, I don't know. Does that seem right? But here's where thinking comes in. Yeah, you think it through. My first question was, have we ever received gifts before? And of course, Statue of Liberty is the first one that comes to mind. And if you do a little bit of research, you learn, over here, the Resolute desk is from a foreign country. Oh, you've got the monument, that teardrop 9/11, that came from our good buddy Vladimir Putin. So this isn't anything new. And it's not for Trump, it's for the presidency. And then whenever it is retired, then it goes to the presidential library, which is run by the federal government, the Library of Congress. And so then you start to realistically go, well, okay, I guess there is nothing wrong with it. Oh, bonus, taxpayers don't have to pay for it. Now, there's got to be obviously some upgrades done to it. I'm sure that there are going to be national security aspects of it that, we do ourselves. So there is going to be a cost, but it certainly is going to be a lot cheaper than having to purchase the plane itself, which is a whole nother story with Boeing. Now, here's what Trump, he posted on Truth Social after ABC News first started reporting on this yesterday. Quote, "So the fact that the Defense Department is getting a gift free of charge of a 747 aircraft to replace the 40-year-old Air Force One temporarily in a very public and transparent transaction so bothers the crooked Democrats they insist that we pay top dollar for the plane? Anyone can do that. The Dems are world-class losers. MAGA. We're going to take a quick break, and there's a typical government contract with Boeing situation that's going on in the background at the same time. We'll have that next. Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company, you have storm damage, roof damage, so stressful. And then you have to deal with insurance, and that can be stressful, especially if you rarely deal with insurance. If you are currently in that situation, I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Not only does the Pyramid team offer free roof inspections, but they also work through that insurance process with you without making you sign anything. Not all roofing companies do that, by the way, but the Pyramid team, they really do understand that getting a new roof can sometimes be very stressful, and they want to make that whole process as stress-free as possible. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company team out to your home, give Josh a call today. Now you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, I was trying to find, let's see here. This is the CNBC story. All right, I've got a few different stories about this Air Force One and Qatar offering up this temporary Air Force One plane, and a lot of this goes to the fact that back during, if it was the previous administration, let's see which of these stories here. You have to bear with me. So during Trump's first term, and you may recall, I recall this occurring, he struck a deal to modernize two Boeing 747s to be used as the new Air Force One aircraft. But as like most things when it comes to government contracts, all of a sudden, even though it's a fixed price contract, it's already, I think, $2 billion over budget. They're saying it won't even be done until 2029 at this point, though they've said, well, we think we can get it done 2027. And this was during his first term. You're talking about 11 or 12 years. I don't know. Maybe that's normal. Maybe 11 years is a normal time frame to build a 747. I don't know the answer to that. And I understand that it is going to take a little bit of extra time because you have to fit it specifically for a number of different technologies that allow it to stay safe for the president of the United States. And, we hear all these things about how it can withstand a nuclear blast and, so I know, but man, like 10 or 11 years? And already, well, right now we're looking at about $2 billion more than we thought it was going to be. And so Lord knows how much more it's going to cost whenever they actually get to delivery date, if that would be 2027 or 2029. And so you've got Qatar saying, hey, we got one you can use in the meantime. And then once, the plan apparently is, once the Air Force, the two separate Air Force Ones, which there's only, it's only technically Air Force One when the president's on it, but that those are complete, that Boeing contract, then this one would be retired to the Presidential Library that is covered by or controlled by the National Archives. Now, you do even have some Republicans that are saying this is a bad idea. Pro-Trump activist and journalist Laura Loomer urging Trump not to accept such a gift, declaring, quote, I love Trump. I would take a bullet for him, but I have to call a spade a spade. This is really going to be a stain on the administration if it's true. Now, I disagree. In fact, I don't think anyone would even remember this. And I think this is one of those, listen, on one hand, I understand saying, well, why bother? Because the left is just going to pitch a fit about it, and they're going to make some sort of big deal out of it. Well, the problem is they do that with everything. And so if you begin defaulting to, well, is it really worth it because the left is going to pitch a fit over it, then you end up being led around by the Democrats and their disinformation and hysteria when it comes to decision making. Now, I also understand recognizing that this isn't the sort of have-to thing. Like, why even mess with it? Why do it? It's not worth it. It would be one thing if there was no Air Force One for the president to fly around in, and he's grounded until Boeing gets the plane finished, and this is an opportunity for him to be able to get around when he otherwise wouldn't. That clearly isn't the situation. So I don't think at the same time it's completely unreasonable for some Republicans to say, or Trump supporters, that, well, I don't really know that this is worth it in order to do it. But if you just look at the sheer facts of it, and that the United States as a government has received gifts from other countries before, including for the Oval Office, the Resolute Desk. This isn't something that goes to Trump personally. It isn't something that Trump is going to, like the Newsweek said, gets to keep. He doesn't keep it. Yes, it goes to the Trump Presidential Library, but that's not his library. He doesn't own it. Those aren't his things in it. I go back and forth between I understand it's probably not worth it because of the hassle, but then at the same time, like, why are we going to let those people control what it is that is not that big of a deal ultimately? I will say that the White House's verbiage in defending this makes it sound like it's very legalistic, and it makes it sound like, well, technically what we're doing may not be great, but legally it's correct. You have Pam Bondi and David Warrington, according to ABC News, concluding that it would be, quote, legally permissible. Well, that just makes it sound like, I don't know, it sounds like, well, yeah, you probably shouldn't do it, but legally I guess you're allowed to. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in a statement to ABC News, quote, any gifts given by a foreign government is always accepted in full compliance with all applicable laws, adding President Trump's administration is committed to full transparency. And it's true and it's accurate, but when you start using a lot of that legally permissible, and it just sounds like lawyers speak, and to me, it's like, this is no big deal. We've gotten gifts from other countries before. Statue of Liberty is one of them. And by the way, do you know how much crap we give other countries? I mean, we're constantly giving other countries stuff all the time. Ukraine, anyone? The Taliban, they got an entire military out of us, not to mention every other country in the stinking world. God forbid for once we take a gift. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see a slight chance for rain throughout the day, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 75. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Tuesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then clear sunny skies with a high near 81. And looking ahead to Wednesday, sunny with a high near 87.
Well, we got one. Somebody, Nick is mispronouncing.
Yeah.
There are entire articles written about how to pronounce it. There's numerous ways. In fact, in some areas of the Middle East, it's not even with a K sound; it's a G sound. There's Qatar, there's Qatar, there's Qatar. There's numerous different pronunciations. A lot of things in the Middle East are that way for whatever reason. There's all these different variations of pronunciation. Before, and I'd been to Ukraine. I've been to Kiev, and it was always Kiev until all of a sudden the Russian invasion, and then it became Kyiv all of a sudden. And so you have these different pronunciations. And during the war in Iraq, there was Saddam and Saddam Hussein. So there are various pronunciations. Now, if you're actually there on, and how it is that the natives say it, that honestly I don't even know. I just know that there are articles written about how do you say it because of the different forms of pronunciation. But the reason I mentioned it is because Sarah off air, she's like, I think it's Qatar, and I thought I'd mention that before someone tries to correct it.
I know somebody's going to say it because I always hear it as Qatar.
Yeah. Which I always appreciate when people text in stuff like that. I was surprised it was only one person, though. And I don't know, Qatar may be the favored way, but Qatar works. So I declare.
Tomato, tomato.
Tomato, tomato, pajama. Saddam, Sodom. There's a lot of them out there. On Friday's broadcast of HBO's Real Time, ABC News contributor and former Democratic National Committee chair Donna Brazile said that Democrats did not hold an open primary. I love how they're just fully openly acknowledging now that they like overthrew the election and they rigged it. The party that claims they're so worried about Trump destroying democracy. And here you've got Donna Brazile. It's like, oh, well, here, let's talk about why we just decided that, that election of Joe Biden getting the nomination and stuff, we don't think so. We're just going to overthrow it. She said the reason that the Democrats did not hold an open primary to determine their nominee in 2024. And by the way, they did. They did open. There was an open primary. They just ignored it. They did try to rig it. Think about all the money that was wasted holding those elections and those caucuses in every state. You had that Democrat member of Congress, whose name I can never remember. He ran. He was out there saying, listen, Joe Biden's a little old. I think that we need somebody else. And he if I remember correctly, even acknowledged he probably wasn't the best option and was begging some other Democrat to step up and to run in the election because there was a real need to have an alternative to Joe Biden. RFK Jr. was running as a Democrat. But the Democrats, they started moving the calendar around in order to help Joe Biden. He did not do well in New Hampshire, so they tried to move New Hampshire. New Hampshire said no. The first time around, they were afraid that he would not, they weren't afraid that he was going to lose the nomination, lose those elections. But anything that looked like significant erosion of his support obviously does not look good going into a general election. And RFK Jr. at the time was polling with double-digit numbers. And so New Hampshire being one of those states that they feared would make Joe Biden look weak as he was running for re-election. So they told New Hampshire, you have to move your primary so that it's after South Carolina, where Joe Biden was expected to do very well. And when New Hampshire noted, their Secretary of State said, we can't. Our law states we have to be the first. Whomever is first, we have to go before that. We have to be, that's what our law says. And so they took away their delegates from them. Flat out told New Hampshire, fine, we're going to take away the right of all of your Democrat voters to vote. They moved to Iowa. So they did have an election, every state. Even when they are admitting that the whole thing was a sham, they still can't really admit what happened. Back to the point. Donna Brazile, and she's the one who you may recall, she worked on Al Gore's campaign. She also was with CNN. She's the one who fed the debate questions to Hillary Clinton when Hillary Clinton was up against Donald Trump. And she lied about it, and then, she got caught. She was fired or had to quit. She said the Democrats didn't hold an open primary to determine their nominee in 2024 after then President Joe Biden dropped out of the race because there was an assumption that then candidate Trump's convictions would tarnish him enough to ensure that he lost. And, of course, that's BS. How do we know that's BS? Because the polling said otherwise. That's why they forced Joe Biden out. Every poll was showing that he was going to lose. So Donna Brazile claiming that, the reason that we didn't hold an open primary is because, we just thought there's no way that Biden couldn't win. He had to because Trump being a felon meant that people wouldn't vote for him. But the polling showed otherwise. She said they thought it was going to be an easier task and that it wouldn't matter. While discussing Biden's recent interview in the 2024 presidential race, Representative Mike Lawler, a Democrat from New York, stated, I think for the Democrats, if they had an open primary, it would have made a difference. Host Bill Maher agreed with the assertion that an open primary would have made a difference. Brazile then stated, quote, I also think most Americans assumed that American people would not vote for a convicted felon. And they thought that it was going to be an easier task and that it wouldn't matter. You notice how these Democrats, they act as if the American people are separate from the American people. They say, well, I think what was happening here is that Americans assumed that they wouldn't vote for a convicted felon. Well, how does that work? Because the Americans who were out there campaigning for Trump, voting for, are you saying that they thought, I guess I may not vote for him because he's a convicted felon? I mean, this stuff is total nonsense. It's gibberish that some of these people speak. And I can tell you what the source of it is. It is the absolute complete refusal to acknowledge that they were rejected. They just twist themselves into these irrational knots to try and explain why it is that Trump won in the context of, well, Trump is still bad, we're still good. And so never is the answer, we just fail. We fail at the border. We fail with the economy. We fail with education. We fail with kids, specifically when it comes to sex change operations. We fail when it comes to the ability to even identify the difference between a man and a woman. We fail when it comes to dealing with disasters, whether it was the train derailment that took place or the fires out in L.A., which, of course, was post-election. But the hurricanes, that's another example. You look at the difference between how it was that somebody like Ron DeSantis handles hurricanes versus some of these other states that are either reliant on FEMA at the time under the Biden administration or run by Democrats. And it's just fail after fail after fail after fail. And they can't ever just admit that ultimately is what it all boils down to. That's why every demographic except for white, rich, liberal, university-educated women, that was the only category that ended up being an increase of support for Kamala Harris, but every single other category, Trump increased. Hispanics, working people, the blacks, I mean, every category. And the reason that people like Donna Brazile and other Democrats, we watch, like, why do they keep trying to rationalize it? Because if they admit that they fail, then everything that they are is wrong. Some of these people, this is their entire existence. This is all that they've done their entire lives, is lived off this idea that big government is the answer, soft on crime is the answer, that anti-Semitism, or at least being somewhat friendly and flirting with anti-Semitism is the answer, and all, that this is their entire, that is their life. That is what they have argued. That is how they make their money. And so to suddenly say, you know what, actually we're just wrong. Our approach is incorrect. When we are put in charge of things, the quality of life diminishes. When we run a state, people leave our state to move to a state that is run by our opposition. And the idea that they're going to just admit that everything they've ever been about is wrong, well, then what's left of them? Nothing. So this is why they will continue to make these insanely ridiculous statements that make a person think that they're just so nonsensical, and it's desperation. I mean, meanwhile, you've got, let's see, DNC official reveals how Democrats spent nearly $2 billion trying to trick Americans. This is David Hogg. He was on the same program, being interviewed by Bill Maher, and he noted that the Democrat Party lost the primary election because they spent a fortune trying to get voters to believe that Joe Biden was absolutely fine and the economy was performing well. Quote, people said that to us. Joe Biden is too old, and they said prices are too high, Hogg recounted on Real Time with Bill Maher. And we said, with the power of $2 billion behind us, no, he's not. Then yes, he is. Then no, they're not. Look at this graph of the stock market. And it was, he was repeating what it was that Democrats were trying to tell us during the election. There's, we've got to get a quick break in here. There's this other story. Some of my stories didn't print off. This Crockett gal she's out there. She gave an interview that has a lot of people's interest peak because she claims that it's pretty much known in the Democrat Party that they've already chosen who the next nominee is. This is where, understand, Democrats, you guys really don't have much say in this stuff anymore. While the Republican Party as an apparatus has dealt with a great deal of frustration that the Republican voters do not listen to them and have continued to, for example, vote for Donald Trump or a lot of these Trump people when the party is like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, we can't win if you do it. And Republican voters say, you know what? No, we're going to vote how we want to vote. The Democrat Party, at this point, you have Jasmine Crockett out there. She's claiming, hey, guys, the candidate's already been picked. And it's a safe white boy. I think that you need to have a little self-reflection here as a party that claims Donald Trump is going to cancel elections. Donald Trump is a danger to democracy. When your party is the one that canceled Joe Biden's election and is already, you've got this Crockett congresswoman out there claiming that it doesn't matter what you want. Your next candidate's already been chosen for you and you'll like it. You'll all stand up and applaud, just like you did when you were told Kamala Harris was your new choice. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Ozarks Elder Law, we're right here in Springfield, and so when I talk to you about the importance of making sure you have that planning in place to protect you, protect your family, when it comes to, everything from, it's time to move to the assisted living center, or who is going to be the caretaker for this particular family member, or when that time of passing on, and you hopefully are able to leave behind some things for your family without being a financial burden, and how, unless you have that nailed down with Ozarks Elder Law, you can find yourself in a world of hurt. And so, because, we're in Springfield, you think, the Springfield area, obviously, but there is Springfield. These are 10 different areas that have offices: Ozark, Nixa, Branson, Lebanon, Marshfield, Bolivar, Republic, Joplin, and now Mountain Grove. So they aren't just based in Springfield, but there are offices all over the area to make it convenient for you. And they're not hourly. This is not something that you think, I'm curious if I'm in a good place. But what I don't want to do is find out that, we had to work 12 hours on this and it's $400 an hour. So here's your bill. And by the way, we're not done. They'll consult with you, and then up front you'll be told, here's what the cost is. It's one price. They don't nickel and dime you. per hour or quarter hour. Ozarks Elder Law at ozarkselderlaw.com. Representative Jasmine Crockett, Democrat, Texas, who it is a gift to Republicans that Democrats love this gal because Democrats, they've got Trump derangement syndrome, which does not allow them to clearly recognize what it is that normal, average, everyday people see when they see Donald Trump. And by the way, that doesn't mean everyone loves him. You can dislike him and not be deranged. The problem with so many Democrats is they're deranged when it comes to Trump, so they can't even rationally disagree with him because their default is irrational. This same affliction makes it impossible for those same Democrats to understand what normal Americans see when they see someone like Representative Crockett. See, they love her because she says F Trump and she rails on Americans and talks about getting in your face and, just they love that. I saw, in fact, I think it was Stephen Colbert. It was a promo. I mean, this gal the Democrats can't get enough of her because it feeds this this hatred. It feeds their Trump derangement syndrome, and so having some elected Democrat come out and say all of these hysterical things and act like some sort of nut job who's an audience member from the Jerry Springer show they love that. But it's great for Trump. And it's really great for Republicans because when it comes down to a lot of Americans voting and they're trying to decide between the two sides, sometimes it's just an association factor, and they think when they see Ilhan Omar or Jasmine Crockett or any of these other left-wing lunatics, they think, well, I know I don't like that. Sure, Republicans, both sides do things that I don't necessarily care for, and they can be wrong-headed. But over there, man, they are just flat out crazy. So I do not want to be in that camp over there. So, of course, she's doing an interview with Clay Kane, who has a show on Sirius XM. No idea who the guy is. This was on Friday. And she claimed that Democrats already were lining up what she called the, quote, safest white boy for the 2028 presidential race, noting that there was one specific candidate. She went on to say, quote, it is this fear that the people within the party, within the primary system, will have about voting for a woman, because every time we voted for a woman, we've lost so far. And I think that that's a natural fear because we just want to win. And so she noted that they were already lining up a white boy, saying, quote, so there's a lot of people that are like, you know what, let's just find the safest white boy we can. I mean, I'm just saying. No, for real, and to be clear, when we talk about them, I can tell you that there is one specific candidate. I had a donor on the phone with me telling me that all the donors are lining up behind the candidates, so I can tell you it's not a black person nor a woman, okay? She referred to Democrat donors as they during the discussion, suggesting that they were the same people who backed former President Joe Biden. And the speculation is she's talking about Gavin Newsom, who, of course, has run California into the ground. So that puts him to the top of the list for the Democrat Party. Now, to me, the reason that Democrats lose every time they put up a woman candidate is because they pick these idiotic nut jobs. I mean, yeah, you could put up 1,000 Kamala Harrises. It's not anti-woman to vote against her. It's just anti-idiot. But still, the fact that the Democrat Party and its own members are just saying, oh, the donors are already picking for all of you who your candidate's going to be. And I don't know how it is that Democrat voters rationalize that, because, again, this is an area Republicans do not have a problem whatsoever. In fact, The Republican Party is the opposite. The Republican Party tells voters, here's who you need to vote for. It has gotten to the point where that works against that candidate. The candidate does not want to be seen as picked by a donor. Meanwhile, Democrats are running around like, just so you know, we already got the next one picked out for you. And they know that the Democrats will line up and they'll show up at the convention. Oh, and they'll be as excited as they're told to be. And then if it backfires on them, they'll all just sit around wondering, and talking about, well, maybe we should have actually had an open primary and allowed the voters to decide. Springfield's talk, don't worry, they'll let you pretend that you get to decide. But in the end, it's up to them. I hope you all have a fantastic Monday. Talk to you tomorrow morning.